because I'm walking around for 6 hours a day and it's something to do. But
Yeah.
also, it's kind of I tend to listen back just so I can listen out for audio quality issues and see if I missed anything. I just learn from it. As like you, I treat it more of an educational thing. I don't listen to
Yeah.
it for the vanity of hearing my own voice because I can't stand my own
Yeah.
voice, but as nobody does.
I don't I don't mind my own voice. I just figure it is what it is. And I know my editing, and I've gone through the editing process, and I probably have to do the editing for my thing today. It would be nice before the IndyCar race actually happens. It'd be a novel concept. But that's I figure it is what it is. If you're gonna listen, you're gonna listen. I haven't gotten bad ratings or whatever, so. And even if I did get bad ratings, I really wouldn't give a crap. I'd literally just respond, thank you. Because then that would just make them madder anyway. So.
I'm not surprised at all that the best way to respond to the haters, mate. That's the best way to go, really. Just so you're aware as well, we are live streaming on YouTube now, so nothing incriminating.
I just noticed as I was talking, so I was like, oh, okay, no swearing now.
I didn't think it'd do it that quickly. I thought it'd just like let me put the description stuff in, but it's just like nope, straight on and put the description in later, which is a bit weird.
So you're opening with the Manscaped bit, right?
Yes, I will kindly ask you to go. I'll go on mute for that.
Yeah.
I've not got the shirt on though. I don't know where the shirt's gone. It's probably
did Rex hide it?
He might have done. He might have done. Just like, Daddy, don't embarrass me. I don't want to look back on this.
No, he's okay. He doesn't. The Manscaped is the least of the problems. The fact that I think he's just going to be madder later on in life that you've taken candid pictures of him. Like, that's the part where he's probably not going to be happy in about like 10 years. Like, Dad, seriously, bro, you have to cool it with the pictures. At least I'll give you this. At least he's dressed well. My mom and dad had horrible style back in the 80s, and the crap they dressed me in was atrocious. And my mom just sits there aghast when I go and say there. I'm like, what was this? Like, oh, that was the style of the day. Look at me. I'm a dough ball, and I look like a freak. It's like all these asshole Hollywood people and how they give them horrible names, and then they dress them poorly too, and then you wonder why they're getting picked on, and then they need to be on meds and everything. Like, look yourself in the mirror, genius. It's not that hard. It's basically the egghead principle.
Oh God! There you are, Henrico.
Fine, a friggin' Lee.
I must have let about at least a dozen Henrico Marks into this Zoom chat before we finally got the real you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on.
Well, it's working now. So let's Just so you're aware, mate. We are currently live on YouTube. So, like I said, nothing incriminating. That's for the post show.
So no product placement.
There will be product placement. Don't you worry about that.
No, my product placement is my Mario Andretti Funko Pop there.
Oh my God, they've got a Funko Pop.
They got a Funko Pop for everything. It was bad. Oh, that's a story for the post show. But
yeah, we've got a few as well, to be fair.
Well, yeah.
Oh wow.
Come on, George.
There you go.
Wow.
You see, now that's going to be another problem for Rex once he thinks, oh, those are toys. And then when Dad freaks out because they have value. Yeah.
They're all still in the box and it's staying that way.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
That's like my diecast car collection. It's like my MP44. If I ever had a kid and like my kid touched the MP44, I'd probably be in the hospital. Because it's the MP44.
Yeah.
It was the unicorn. I never thought I could get it.
I wouldn't mind the MP4 18A, just because it was such a troublesome car and riddled with folklore. That's the one I want.
Wasn't that the Alonso Stoffel Van Dorn car that couldn't go more than 5 laps before it went back into the garage?
No, the 18A was the one that was the first car that had blown diffusers and stuff on it, and it was supposed to be like this Adrian Newey incredible design of brilliance, and it was just so riddled with problems. It would like come out of the pits and it would set on fire before it finished coming out the pit lane, and Alex Wurz had a huge crash in it, and where it basically just fell apart while he was driving at 200 miles an hour. It never hit the track. They went with the 17D for the rest of the season and jumped straight to the 19, and it never actually raced.
So what year was that?
It's the MP4 18A. It was.
Wow, 2005, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
Alex
it's before
Wurz,
that.
like,
It was.
driving.
Yeah, it's Alex Wurz. I'm trying to think of Juan
It's pre
Pablo
2005.
Montoya was driving. I was thinking if Montoya was driving that car because we saw how well.
So Wurz was the test driver.
Test driver.
And there was
One of the
Della
test
Rosa
drivers
as well. I think
It was
Della Rosa
Raikkonen.
as well.
Yeah, Raikkonen was racing, so it was probably Raikkonen and Montoya, I'd imagine. As you said.
Yeah, because Montoya moved to McLaren from Williams. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was like 04 to 06 or something.
Yeah, it's Raikkonen, Coulthard, and Raikkonen, Montoya. I think it was Raikkonen, Coulthard, actually.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I think
Raikkonen,
it was.
Coulthard, and then he moved to Red Bull.
Yeah.
After that, yeah,
Yeah.
it was him and Weber because
May have
Weber
been Hakkonen's last year. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember
No,
what year it is.
Hakkinen was 2001 was his last year.
Yeah.
Because he won the US
I know it's
Grand
early.
Prix.
I know it was early 2000s. I can't remember if it's 2001, 2002. I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm gonna have to
He
Google.
won the US Grand Prix at Indianapolis, and he was all like, he had found his personality and everything, and he was all like waxing poetic about how life was and everything. And, like I remember that Mika Hakkinen. I'm like, yeah, he's all mellow because he's like, yeah, Schumacher wins, whatever, it's fine. I'm leaving now. And then he went to DTM.
Enrico, what should I've never actually asked you what I should use as your prefix. I just use superfan or F1 fanatic or something like that. Was there something you prefer instead?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay. Fair enough, mate. Well, we'll get going when Phil's rejoined us. No rush though.
Yeah, it was 2003. The 18.
2003.
Yeah, so it's Raikkonen and Montoya for the second year. They were trying to run it, and Raikkonen and Coulthard for the first year.
Yeah, that sounds like McLaren with Newey at the end there. They just because Raikkonen's whole entire career with McLaren, if they could have given him a car that would have lasted, he would have won a world championship.
They gave him 2 championship-winning cars, and he squandered it. One he was too young, and the other because McLaren were too.
Yeah,
03 and 05.
Yeah.
Could easily been championship.
No, 03, 03 is the one for me with Montoya because I was a Montoya guy.
Yeah.
And I wish he would have won that world championship.
That was a great year, that. People just think 2000 to 2004 was just Schumacher dominance. And yeah, he won the championship.
It was like every other year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, 03 was the year. Like people do not understand how good that was because those 3 different teams, 3 great drivers. I mean, Juan Pablo Montoya, whatever you want to think about him, but I mean, I'm a fan of him from being here, but the fact of the matter is he's one of the greatest drivers ever. And Kimi Räikkönen's a great driver and he's hilarious. And you have Schumacher. And it's similar to like 2010 and 2012 in that way, with how Vettel, everyone thinks about Vettel 2010 through 2013 was his dominance, which in a sense it was. But Alonso had a chance to win 2 of those titles in a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And then they gave it away. Think about that. Think about how many freaking titles that guy could have if he hadn't
made the right moves at the right time.
If he wasn't such a knob and he could deal with that, if he could deal with competition, if he could deal with competition just
such
a little
wally.
He's, I'm gonna do a James Davison because every time somebody cuts him off in a sim race, he's a effing wanker. Him and Will Power, they yell that they use the wanker constantly, and both of them are wankers too, which I guess that's why I guess they have carte blanche to say it. But,
Oh wow!
Oh, I love you, Phil. Right, shall we get going
before we get cancelled?
2012
no, we're not getting
was
cancelled.
2012 was an insane year, though. That was what the first 7 races, 7 different winners.
Yeah.
Yeah, Crash Storm Maldonado won a race.
Oh yeah,
Crash Storm Maldonado won a race because Lewis got the 5 grid spot penalty at that dump.
He got thrown out of qualifying. I remember he got disqualified.
Or something,
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah, he qualified on pole. It was Catalunya, that garbage circuit, and he sent him to the back, and then Crash Storm Maldonado won.
Oh yeah, that's right. It wasn't Valencia, was it? No, Valencia was when Maldonado put him in a wall like 3 laps from the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Schumacher's last podium in F1 as well.
Yeah. Valencia is now in like ruins, like every Olympic village, every Olympic venue now too. It's really sad.
Yeah, I'm glad we're never going to go back there though. That was.
Yeah.
Oh well, Miami's going to end up like that. That Miami's going to end up like that if it doesn't come off here after a few years. It's going to look like the University of Miami, like they're going to talk like it's going to be like the 80s. It's going to be like Miami Vice if it doesn't come off. You're going to have 85-year-old Don Johnson in a 1980 Pontiac Firebird coming around with, I don't even think, what's his name, Philip Michael Thomas is alive anymore, so we're going to have to find another token guy to fit that role, and they're going to be doing crimes on the circuit. They're going to take Danny Sullivan racing around and doing his horrible acting because after 30 years he still can't act. That'll be a good episode. They should bring back Miami Vice now that they're going to have the Miami F1 race.
All of our tangents.
No, my tangents, because this is early in the morning.
To be fair.
Yeah, true.
Like you're just giving me a kernel of something and I'm just going off because it's early in the morning.
Right, let's get started, lads. Go record. It's the cloud. Alrighty. Going into round 3 of the season, and Sir Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen are only separated by a single point after the race at Imola. Welcome back to the Grid Talk podcast, everybody. This is episode number 99, where we'll be previewing the Portuguese Grand Prix. I'm your host, George Howson, and I'm joined today by Tom Horrox from the Monkey Seat podcast.
Hi.
From the Grip Strip podcast, it's Phil Mathew.
Hello.
And we also have F1 superfan Henrico Marks.
Hi there.
Right, lads. So before we kick off into the show, I'm going to kindly ask you all to go on mute, which you already have. Thank you very much. Because we're going to bring you a sponsored message from Manscaped. Now, this podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. If you haven't heard of Manscaped, they're a company that produces high-quality products for your downstairs areas. Manscaped were kind enough to send us some products to try, and I really like them, and I do generally mean that. Got a bit of a trim up here as well, as most people can see, so feeling fresh. Now, during lockdown, making sure that your front edge is nicely trimmed has not been the top of our priorities. Let's be honest, lads, it just hasn't. But as things start to open up again, you need to make sure you're looking as good as possible absolutely everywhere. This is my favorite for the job. It is the Lawnmower 3.0, and it's honestly the best trim I've ever had down there. And it even comes with an LED light as well, as people on the video can now see. I can't recommend giving Manscaped a go enough. And every listener of the Grid Talk podcast can now get 20% off their first order when they sign up using the code GridTalk20. That's GridTalk, no space, 20. Right, and now back to the show. So, like I mentioned before, I don't know how you didn't explode there. I'm just laughing. Right, so like I was saying before, Tom, it's only 1 point between Sir Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming into Portugal. Just that single fastest lap point for Hamilton at Imola separating the two. We've got a real championship battle on our hands, and it's very hard to call who's going to be the fastest going into Portugal.
Yeah, I mean, last year it was Hamilton's record-breaking 90-second win at Portugal, and one of the few people that had raced there before, having set one of the faster times there when they were back there in 2009 for the test session, back in his McLaren days. So he had a bit of experience of the track. Max Verstappen, I don't think had ever raced there before. But I think the box office duel between them, it's gonna be tight, and I think Hamilton's probably got the best chance of going into the race ahead. I think with the bit more experience he's got on that, and the fact he did so well there last year, they were just a class above once they got through the early section of the race anyway. So I think it's so with that crucial fastest lap point advantage, that's something that I think you're going to see teams putting a bit more weight behind for the rest of the season, and not just the people trying to get those fastest laps as well. What you'll see Perez will be losing positions to try and take the point away from Hamilton in later races, because Verstappen's not going to be in position to go for it, and vice versa. They may try and sacrifice Bottas's races a bit later on in the season when things are a bit more cut and dried. We expect it's going to be between these two for the title, and once that's a bit more confirmed, I think you'll start to see those tactics coming into play a bit more in the fastest lap. Probably that one point at the moment could end up being crucial, whether it be this point or a point later on in the season where he doesn't get it or he does get it. I honestly don't know where it's going to go. Normally sort of by coming into race 3, you've got a bit of an idea of the pecking order. We still don't really know, and that's great. It's going to be a great season as a result.
Yeah, I'm absolutely hyped for it. I mean, the fastest lap point, I think it was brought in for 2019. Some people were a bit critical. They thought, why are they doing this? How is it going to change things? But when it's this close in a championship battle, it can be crucial. It's been decided on half a point in the past. 1984, Niki Lauda won it ahead of Alan Prost for half a point. So a whole point can make a massive difference. And like
88 too, with the count back.
Yeah. I mean, they used to drop races back then as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
So thankfully, we don't do that anymore because the cars are still reliable. But yeah, there you go. So, Phil, I mean, obviously Mercedes were the dominant force at Portugal last year. Hamilton in particular, I think he won by over 20 seconds from ahead of Bottas, despite being behind him. So even though it was a new circuit to pretty much everybody on the grid, Hamilton was in dominant form. But Max Verstappen at Imola was in dominant form too. I mean, he won by 20 seconds himself as well. So we've got a real championship battle, and like I said, it's hard to call, but Red Bull at least do look fastest in qualifying for the most part. So that could be a telling one.
Oh yeah, I think for this race in particular now, Georgia, the notion of Max, they didn't have the best car, obviously. Last year they finished 9, near like 8.9 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas, with Max Verstappen in third there last year. But the difference is Red Bull has, in theory, a faster car on one lap pace. They have had the pace advantage at times already through 2 races. Obviously at Imola it was basically cut and dry. This racetrack, unlike Imola, though, allows for overtaking. It allows for a little bit more strategy. The pit road is not the longest pit road, so pit road deltas are not as extreme as it would be at Imola, which is like basically however long the freaking pit road is, way too long. And the fact is, there's going to be a lot. This is really going to be a full effort between the Red Bull team and both of their drivers. I mean, Checo was whatever happened. I mean, they just figure out ways to sabotage a second driver, no matter who it is. But if you give Checo a chance at this racetrack, he did all right last year in this race, or from what I gather, and I'm probably remembering wrong, because he did drive for Tracing Point back then. So he did finish 7th in that race, or no, that's practice. Sorry.
Yeah, he got spun around by Verstappen, didn't he, at the start? And he recovered for 7, so actually he did do a good race.
Yeah. So, good call there. So, yeah, so I did call the right spot. I was just looking at the wrong thing, of course. That is what I would do. But, yeah, he got dumped by his teammate, and his current teammate, and he still came back because that's what Sergio Perez does. But if you give him a clean race, if he actually has a clean race for the first time this season, you're going to forget about this. Is going to be the other way around. Mercedes has not been on the back foot like this for a long time. Probably going back to a couple of years ago when Vettel was still functional with Ferrari, and that's where you're going to have a 2-on-1. It's going to become a really difficult deal for Lewis to actually get the job done. I mean, they tried and they missed because they messed up the pit stop. And even if they didn't mess up the pit stop, I don't think they were going to be able to hold off Max. And then, of course, Lewis made an untimely random error that he would never do. So he's having to push. So this is actually a great thing. Can Max continue to keep up the pressure and not make his own mistakes? Something that he was known for before in his career. He's kind of cleaned up. Every practice session, qualifying, it's intriguing now, and it's a head-to-head battle, and it's a beautiful thing for Formula One as we move through this season and into 2022 as well, with new regulations, how things could actually turn out in the grand scheme for this series. But thinking about this race, it's going to be great between Max and Lewis for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is, Hamilton versus Verstappen. Me and you talked about it on your podcast, and you've also spoke about it on my website, Spotlight Pro, as well. It's something that we've waited years for, and it's here, and it's amazing. I'm loving it already just after 2 rounds. We've got 23 in total as it stands, so plenty more of the season still to go. But Henrico, like Phil touched on there, the second drivers of these teams, Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez, they could play a key role, especially around the track as well. Unlike Imola, where you can overtake, it is a relatively easy track to overtake around. So we could see all kinds of strategy going on. I mean, I just want to see a clean race where both drivers from both teams can go at it and try the alternate strategies, try and overcut, try and undercut. I want to see that. Don't get me wrong, Imola was amazing with the weather, but I want to see a straight fight with him. And I think then we get a better idea of who's more like the top dog.
No, for sure. I think the second drivers are going to play a huge role, not just in this race. I think that's probably what the championship's going to come down to this year, because we know Max and Lewis are going to end up on the podium. Either one or the other or both in pretty much every race. And I think that's a battle in and of itself. But as far as the Constructors' Championship goes, I think it's down to Perez and Bottas. Bottas so far hasn't looked comfortable in his car. Perez, if you compare his pace in Bahrain to Imola, he looked a hell of a lot more comfortable in Imola, barring the race itself, which went a bit awry, but I don't think that blame rests completely on him. I think he's going to make some massive gains, and if you consider what he was able to do in Portimao last year, I mean, he had to pit on the second lap, and he pulled himself up to 7th. So that was a very good run. And the big thing with Perez, and I've said it before, versus Bottas, Perez is an absolute overtaking king. He does it extremely well. And Bottas, unfortunately, that Mercedes is not the best car for overtaking, but Bottas seems particularly bad at it. When he's stuck in traffic, he stays in traffic. And it's difficult for him to move up the field. Hamilton can do it. He showed it in Imola. He showed it in Monza last year. He can work his way through the field, and I think that's just down to his skill more than the car. But Bottas, I don't know if he gets in his head, if he just struggles, if he doesn't want to take risks. But I mean, Imola, he was being legitimately overtaken by a Williams. So that says something about his racecraft. It's not quite there. And I think because of what Perez is able to do throughout a race, the pace he's able to keep, the way he's able to preserve his tires, more so than Bottas, I think Red Bull is going to be a huge threat to Merc this year.
I agree with all you said. And I personally think that it could well be Hamilton that wins the Drivers' Championship, but I think Red Bull are a very solid bet to win the Constructors, partly because the Perez being better than Bottas. I mean, look, I think Steph mentioned it on the post-race show, and Tom and Carl as well. But, obviously the incident between Russell and Bottas, whoever you're blaming that, you could blame Russell, you could blame Bottas, 6-1 half into the other. People are giving all the different opinions on it. But the fact is that he was being legitimately overtaken by a Williams, a car that should be 2-3 seconds slower a lap at least. It just doesn't show a lot of confidence. And I think the guy's going to be under some real pressure. And if it's Hamilton versus Verstappen and Perez at this race, Hamilton could drive the race of his life, but there could well still be a Red Bull on the top step of the podium because he doesn't have Bottas to back him up. It's really fascinating, and I can't wait to see more of it. It's a proper championship fight. This is the first time we've we've had this since at least 2018 when it was Mercedes versus Ferrari. But I feel like this is even closer than that, to be honest. But yeah, let us know. Let us know if you think who you think is going to come on top, whether it will be Mercedes or whether it will be Red Bull at the end of the year. Let us know on the YouTube live stream or on Twitter at F1 Chronicle on Twitter. We are. So going into round 3, Tom. I mean, we expected McLaren to be up there in the constructors fight. We expected him to be third in the constructors, but Lando Norris third in the drivers' championship. Could he be a factor in this championship battle? I mean, the guy had, I mean, not in terms of the like challenging at the end of the season, but in terms of mixing it up with Mercedes and Red Bull, the guy has been on fire so far.
I would absolutely love to say yes, he will be in the championship fight, but he won't. Sadly, it's the McLarens. Yes, they're looking great. They're the third best car, but they're still quite a way off. You know, they're not in a position where they could be pushing those guys. If you look at the gap between McLaren and the Mercedes and the Red Bull, if you apply that very same gap from third to fourth, or third from backwards, then McLaren all of a sudden drop from third to sixth or seventh in the constructors. You've got this. They are slightly ahead of the 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th group, but they're not anywhere near the Red Bull and the Mercedes at the moment, unfortunately. As I said, they're there to pick up podiums, and in the odd race situation where something crazy happens, yes, they might have the pace to take the win. I mean, Carlos Sainz led this race last year in a McLaren. It was only for a few laps, obviously, and it was slightly greasy track, and they were the only ones on the soft tyres. And then after that, they completely fell away. I mean, Lando Norris finished 13th in this race last year. So, considering that McLarens were 1-4 at one point in that race and finishing, I think, was it 6th and 13th in the end. So from a position where they were leading, I don't think they've got the pace now. I mean, I would absolutely love it, as I said, as a huge McLaren and especially Lando Norris fan, for the future. Just let's be patient. A couple of years' time, I think next year they're going to make a step, and then after that, maybe you can probably look at 24, 25 is when they're hopefully going to be going for championships. But no, I think right now it's probably a little too soon for my boy. But he's certainly showing that he's got the goods at the moment. He's gone up in a lot of people's estimation. I've said several times that his race pace has always been questionable. He's been a dynamite qualifier from day one. To in your first season and your second season to beat Carlos Sainz in qualifying, albeit by one result both years. To be even on an even par with someone like Carlos Sainz in qualifying for 2 seasons shows that he's a great qualifier, especially as he's learning every step of the way. And now to be comprehensively beating Daniel Ricciardo is very impressive. Now, I know it's still very early days. We've done 2 races. We've got hopefully 21 left to go. So I do think Ricciardo is going to get on top of that car and get on top of Lando in some races, and his experience will come through. But that is the strength of that McLaren team as well. The reason they came third last year was because of the drivers. They had the 4th best car for most of the season, sometimes the 5th, sometimes the 6th best car. At no point did they have the 3rd best car last year, but because of their drivers and their consistency and their racecraft and their intelligence as a team, they were able to see out Racing Point and see out Renault, and that's the reason why they are where they are. But as you say, if Bottas and Perez aren't going to be in that fight as often as they should be, then Lando and hopefully Ricciardo as well can be in there fighting for the odd race result, the odd race win, hopefully. But certainly not a championship at this stage, no, unfortunately.
I was reaching a bit with that one, but I had to ask the question.
And I'm glad you asked me the question.
It's almost like I timed it that. So yeah, Lando Norris doing an amazing job so far. I mean, the guy's racecraft as well. I mean, he passed Charles Leclerc twice, I think, at Imola, and he held him behind for the whole race. He even held Hamilton behind as well for a while. I think the guy's coming on leaps and bounds. So it's really good to see. But surprisingly, though, I mean, it's not that much of a gap back to Ferrari in 4th, though. I mean, they've really recovered after, again, a dismal last year. The red toilet on wheels, as you put it several times. It's those days are thankfully behind us for Ferrari, and they seem to be very solid. Carlos Sainz has slotted into that team incredibly well, and Charles Leclerc is doing amazingly as well. I think Leclerc got about 5th last year at Portugal as well. So you never know. There could be an outside chance for podium for these guys this weekend the guys ahead of them have trouble.
Yeah, I think for Ferrari to have the upgrade with the power unit along with the car, with the progressions that they've made there, and then you add Charles Leclerc being Charles Leclerc, those three things are why they're back. You have Carlos Sainz, who's super stable, whatever, even keel, just like his legendary father. He'd come into a team, he'd come into different teams, and he'd always be able to perform and do what is asked. Of course, his dad's, of course, a legend. He won multiple world championships, and he's still winning at this point in his life. But Carlos is a guy who's a stabilizing force to a team that definitely needs stability. For Ferrari to go out there, qualifying is going to be a key for them because of the long straights. They're giving up a little bit of pace on top end, and Portimao is going to push your top line speed. So that's where they're going to have to battle the Mercedes powered cars. They're going to have to battle Honda, the Red Bulls, of course, and then you're going to have to even battle Renault, the what do you call Alpine, depending on what they're going to be doing. So that's the challenge. Pace has been good. They are in the mix, and good points are there. Possible podium, depending on race weather conditions, could be in play because of Charles Leclerc and how much of a talent that he is. But I'm not sure. I wouldn't be going out that far. I think Tom's McLaren team would be the choice of the group if it was going to be somebody outside of a Red Bull or a Mercedes. But Ferrari at least are back to being relevant again, which for the last couple of years, at times for a while, has not been the case.
Yeah, big improvements by Ferrari. They're not where they want to be. They do want to be winning races and championships. They're a ways away from that, but they've made big strides since last year. So fair play to the guys. Another big strides for another Italian team is Alpha Tauri, Henrico. Now, I'd say in a way with their results, they've really underperformed. But that car has incredible pace, and down the long start-finish straight as well. That Honda engine will really be coming into it. So I would not be surprised to see them be up there with the Ferraris, maybe even beat them. They've got a good chance this weekend, but they just need a clean race. That's what they've avoided so far.
Yeah, the problem that I see with AlphaTauri at the moment is strategy. They messed up completely with Gasly's tyre strategy. I don't know if that was his input or the garage's input, but it was awful. And the fact that they kept him out for, I don't know how many laps it was, but it was at least 5 laps too long. He just fell behind, and look, he recovered well, all credit to him, but it was an awful race for him, and it could have been so good because he qualified pretty well. And I've got a lot of hope for the team. I tentatively predict that they're going to finish 4th in the championship this year. I'm hoping so. I've got a lot of love for that team. But it all hedges on them getting their strategy right, getting the right tires, doing the pit stops the way they should, undercutting and overcutting as they should, and they can do it. They've got a pretty good strategic department to do that. But the other wild card at the moment is Yuki Tanota. Fantastic driver. I rate him extremely well, but I think trying to live up to the hype that everyone's got for him is getting to him a little bit. I think his excellent result in his first race has damaged his racing a bit because he's trying so hard to match or improve on his first result that he's getting into his head and he's making stupid mistakes. He's pushing too hard into corners where he shouldn't. He's just not delivering as he should. And I think he's going to grow out of it. I just hope he can do it quick enough so that AlphaTauri doesn't suffer too much from it, because he's a fantastic driver. I think he's probably going to end up in Red Bull within the next 2 or 3 years. But he just needs to get his head screwed on right and get his head down and actually race his race, not try to impress everyone.
Yeah, it was difficult in Imola, to be fair. Obviously, conditions and the curves and all that. But yeah, he could have easily got points there from the back of the grid, which should have been an unbelievable drive. He still finished 12th, which is, with everything that happened to him, it does show how much pace he's got, like you said. And even though Gasly was stuck out on the wets for way too long, he still finished 7th. That car has some real pace. And around a track where you can overtake, even if they do have some sort of trouble and they do fall back, they can make that ground back up again. So
Yeah, for sure. And I expect them to do well. I'm just a bit worried that they're not going to do as well as they potentially could because of factors that don't include the car.
Yeah, they do seem a bit like this season's Racing Point in that they've got a great car, but they're not getting the results just yet, at least. But very long season ahead. Still 21 races.
Early days.
Very early days indeed. Yeah, like you said, I could see them finishing 4th in the championship as well. I don't think Aston Martin, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, I don't think they have a hope in hell of beating them. I think it's between them and Ferrari for 4th, really. But let's see what happens. Moving on. Speaking of Aston Martin, Tom, they sit 6th in the Constructors' Championship. They had some trouble in testing, obviously. Sebastian Vettel's getting used to the car. So far, it's really not gone to plan for them. And I think all of us have spoke about this at some point, the fact that they copied the Mercedes from 2019. They don't know how to develop that car. It's not their car. And they're just trying to do the best they can with it. And they seem to be suffering because of it. I mean, Vettel's not really looked like getting to the points at all. And Lance Stroll, he's been picking up the odd one, but it's not been inspiring stuff for them. And I mean, how do you see their chances coming into Portugal? I think low-end points are really all they can hope for, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. I agree that they're definitely on the back foot. I was absolutely laughed at and ridiculed for my prediction that they will come 6th in the championship this year at the end of last year. I think at the moment it's looking like they're going to finish 7th, so I was wrong. But yeah, it's a difficult situation for them. I mean, yeah, they stole a march on everyone by going for this copied design thing or the inspired design. And like you say, we've mentioned it so many times about how are they going to be able to develop this car. They proved last year that they can develop the car because they started 3rd quickest, started to slip behind and then recovered and then finished the season the 3rd quickest as well. So in fact, they even started the season the 2nd quickest in my opinion. But even so they proved that they can develop the car, but they've gone with a slightly modified concept this year. And Karen Schaffner is complaining constantly about how he's lost all this downforce that they're entitled to, and it really getting to me. So I think it's take your medicine. So you've lost some performance. So what? It's just literally the same for everyone. So guess what? You've got to design your way out of it. So I think their chances, as you say, low end points is probably the way they're going to end up. I do think Vettel is going to get there, and I do think over the season he is going to beat Stroll. Stroll last year was the only retirement, and I think he hit Norris and then ended up retiring a few laps later. And obviously we said about his teammate had a great race, but he's not there anymore. So Vettel still hasn't got enough mileage in that he would have wanted to get in by the end of practice, and we're 2 races into the season. So he is still getting used to the car. And I've heard a lot of people saying as arguments, oh, well, we don't normally have this argument about people getting used to the car. But what you've got to remember is people spend the whole year getting used to the car. Realistically, learning about the car as they go. This year, the car is almost identical to the year before. In some cases, there are big changes. But when people are getting used to their car, they've got a new teammate comes in, and the existing guy there already knows that car inside and out. Yes, there's a few minor changes to it, but there's not a vast difference, which is why you're seeing people like Ricciardo struggling, Sainz not quite on top of it yet, and Vettel coming in and struggling. And surprise, surprise, which team has had 2 new drivers? And which team is way, way off at the back. And I think that's one thing that we've got to remember. Yes, I know we don't have this thing every year of, oh, he's getting used to the car, he's the best driver in the world, he should be winning. And the other argument I've heard is, if you put Max Verstappen in a Mercedes, will we be saying, oh, he's not going to win the title because he needs to get used to the car for the first year? So, and they're all fair arguments, and these are the best drivers in the world. But I just think that's one thing that people seem to forget about the similarities with the car as a carryover, and that's where you've got to take it into account, which is why I do think that Ricciardo is going to is going to catch Norris and is going to get on top, get at least on an even keel with him. But enough talking about McLaren. I've done that enough for today. Back to Aston Martin. Yes, low end points. I do think they are going to develop the way out of it because there are a lot of good people at that team, but they still need to understand that concept. But the problem is for them, I think their best bet would be to really sack off this year because they've got to focus on next year. That was the whole purpose of this route they went down. Copy the Mercedes for a year, bank the lap time gain, and then focus on 2021. Obviously 2021 has been cancelled till 2022, so I think really this year they've just got to do the best of what they can and then focus on next year. That's really the best thing for them long term, because if they start next year in the position that they would have been as Racing Point, then they're going to be no better off, and then it's not going to be long before heads start rolling. So yeah, it's definitely a quandary for them, and something that they've got to make a decision on what route they're going to go down. But I think for them the best bet would be just to, minimal development, only stuff that's related to next year, and the odd, if there's the odd thing that can bring them lots of lap time, then yeah, go for it. But don't focus too much on this year. Just look to next year.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Though, because obviously there's tens and hundreds of millions of pounds in prize money at stake at the end of the day for every place. So it's a hard one to kind of.
And I hear that Lawrence Stroll is a bit short of cash at the moment, so they need that prize money.
yeah, he's struggling, isn't he? He's selling off all his assets. So yeah, poor fella. What can I say? But at the end of the day, for Aston Martin, where they are with the car that they have, and obviously Vettel again getting used to it. That's partly why Stroll's been the better driver so far for me, by some distance ahead of Vettel, because he's just used to it. And obviously that car will be designed around him, let's be honest, because it will. But if they get sick for the end of the day, ahead of Alpine, I think that'll be an okay season. It'll be disappointing, but given where they've started and all the troubles they've had, it won't be so bad. I've also got to give a mention again to that as well. Karen Schaffner. I've not heard that one. That's
yeah, that's a good.
I want to see your manager, Liberty. I need a better car. This is not right.
That's my better half's influence on me right there.
Oh my god, that is quality. Honestly, I'm going to use that one. I'm going to use that one again. But yeah, so moving on, we have Alpine, Phil, and both of their drivers scored the team's first points at Imola. Obviously, after Kimi Räikkönen's post-race penalty, he dropped out of the points. Ocon beat Alonso. He got 9th. Alonso got 10th. And again, it's another driver who's coming back, admittedly after time out in the sport. But again, he was beaten by Ocon fair and square at Imola, that really surprised me. I did not see that coming at all. So it's going to be an interesting battle between those two going into this weekend, because we all know that Alonso will not go down without kicking and screaming. He's gonna try everything he can to get on top of his younger teammates.
Yeah, and he's come out for I don't know how many different places and said, I don't care about 2021, but let's be honest, when you are Fernando Alonso, you don't want to be beaten by a teammate. So you add that and how the first couple of races have been, plus the notion that this circuit, the Alpine team and their previous guys finished 10th and 11th last year. Their pace relative is they could be in the realm of Ferrari. They could be in the realm of Aston Martins and Alfa Tauris and whatever, or they could be completely out to lunch too. So you got two different things going on here. You have Alonso being Alonso, trying to go and push through with Ocon, who more than likely is going to lose his job to Pierre Gasly anyway in 2022, but for whatever that is. But the fact is, for this race and this time, you're trying to get points, you're trying to get whatever you can as you're trying to develop and build upon whatever you're going to build upon with this car. We will see. I mean, if they only had back end points at a track that had some similar characteristics, both of the first two tracks kind of combined kind of fit to what Portimao is. So they're going to be back end points, 7th, 8th constructors. I mean, to be back with the back three teams is not great. To be on the back end of the quote midfield isn't great. But if their whole entire their in focus is 2022, then well, you get what you get. And it isn't going to be like Daniel Ricciardo last year going and pulling podiums out of that car. It's going to be a lot more of a struggle throughout this entire season for Fred and Esteban. That's probably what it's going to be like this coming weekend at Portimao.
Yeah, I can't see too much changing. I can't see too much changing for them at the end of the day. Their battle will be with the Aston Martins and the Alfa Romeos as well. But it's a long run down into the first corner. You never know. Alonso, very good at starts. At least it used to be anyway. I haven't really paid that much attention to his start so far this season, but never know. He could make some places up there. But unfortunately for him, it's very easy to pass for Portimao. At least it is in my opinion. It's relatively easy. Very long start, finish straight. So we'll see how it goes down with them. But yeah, I gave a little mention to Alfa Romeo there, Henrico, and I think they've been very, very unlucky not to score points so far this season. They finished 11th and 12th in Bahrain. Kimi Raikkonen finished in the points at Imola, but post-race penalty for a safety car infringement, I think it was, dropped him out of the points. That car looks okay, but for them to get points is still a big ask for them at the end of the day.
Don't know. I'm actually of the opinion that car's it's pretty much on par, if not slightly better than the Alpine. I know I'm probably going to get some hate for that, but in the right conditions, I think they could probably outscore Alpine. It's not a bad car. The new nose design, the improved Ferrari engine, I think it can score some decent points. Maybe not in Portimao. It's probably not the circuit for it, because with the super long straights and the sweeping corners and that, it's a very undulating circuit. I don't know if that's the right track for that car, but I think they could potentially score points, especially if Raikkonen pulls a Raikkonen and passes half the field on the first lap. It's not a bad car, and they've got decent drivers in it. I mean, you've got Raikkonen, who on his day can do some real magic, and Giovinazzi, when he can pull something off, he does it really, really well. He's got mad pace, and he races really well. He just makes some stupid mistakes, but they have been becoming less and less in recent races. He's a lot more consistent, so I'm fairly confident that at least one of the Alfa Romeos is going to be in the points in Portimao. Probably going to be Raikkonen, but you never know. We might even see both of them up there. I honestly think that Raikkonen is going to be getting more points this season than Alonso is. That's my theory anyway.
I'm loving these bold calls already. I've not even asked for the bold prediction, just spat a few out there. Raikkonen getting more points than Alonso. I mean, I do agree though what you said. I think that Alfa Romeo, in terms of just a pure car, it could be better than the Alpine. Maybe the drivers are flattering it for Alpine. I can see that. Yeah.
That Alpine's, it's not a good car. That balance just feels. I mean, if you compare it to last year's car was getting podiums. What they got 3 throughout the year. They did better than AlphaTauri did. That car was decent. It was at some tracks, it had the fastest top end out of all of the cars on the track. The Alpine, I don't know. It's just not performing the way anyone expected it to. I don't know if it's to do with the center of gravity, them putting the radiators up so high, the tea kettle look. I don't know if that's affecting it, but it's not performing the way I think anybody thought it would, especially Alonso. I can see him getting very, very, very frustrated and letting the entire paddock know before the end of the year.
Yeah, I think
before
you're right.
Halfway through the year.
Yeah, could well be his home race in Spain after this one. He could have a few choice words for media. But
he might just ask for a GP2 car. You never know.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, the Renault came on really strong in the second half of last year. Like you said, 3 podiums, 2 for Ricciardo, 1 for Ocon. So it's really disconcerting to see how bad it's doing. And the fact that Alonso's like, 2022, that's all we're caring about. So they're probably not going to develop it. So it might get worse relatively compared to the rest of the field as the season goes on, which is which is not what Alonso's come out of retirement to do. He's not going to be happy with that. He'll say, "Oh, we expected this," but no, I don't think they did. I don't think there's any way they would have expected that. So we'll see. I mean, Alfa Romeo's for the points in Portimao is possible, especially like you said, if Kimi Raikkonen does his amazing start again. I mean, I'm not sure what the weather forecast is saying, but it's usually hot and dry in that part of the world this time of year. So we'll see what happens. So moving on to Williams next, Tom. And honestly, I'm generally surprised at their pace at Imola. Not only George Russell in the race, but both him and Latifi during qualifying, both into Q2 comfortably. And on one lap pace, again, that Williams, it's not so bad at all. So if Russell can keep his nose clean, if he can keep it up there, you never know. George Russell for the point. My prediction could finally happen.
It's possible. It is possible. I'm not certain what the climatic conditions are like in the Algarve with regards to wind and everything. But obviously that car is very set up for wind to avoid wind. It's basically they put it in the wind tunnel and they just optimize all the downforce for wind tunnel conditions so that it's going to be an absolute demon when the air is completely still. But as soon as it gets behind another car or you get a bit of a crosswind or something like that, then it's gonna or the tolerances are going to go too far. So they've set it up basically for that one box office result. One race this year or a couple of races this year, they'll be in a position where they'll be running like fifth on pace, genuinely. And then as soon as like the climatic conditions change, they're just going to drop off a cliff. So they're just rolling the dice, hoping for that one box office result that's going to get them 7th or 8th in the championship. That's kind of what their entire season is egged towards. I don't think it's going to be this weekend. And what they need to do is make sure that their drivers actually take advantage of it when they get into that situation. George has done it a few times now where he's just got into a position and he's made a silly error and he's ended up losing that position out. I mean, generally, I don't think he would have got points in Imola, and I don't think he would have got points last year in Imola if things had changed. I just think, with regards to last week's race, yes, he was fighting a Mercedes on pace, but as well, he'd been out on track for a little bit longer. He was used to the conditions. He knew what was going on. Bottas was having issues with tyre warm-up. I think if Russell had got ahead of him, Bottas probably would have got him again a few laps later anyway. And given the way things were going, I just think, and the conditions were drying out, the Williams would have then started to fall back a little bit. So I don't think he's actually thrown away points yet. I think he's thrown away results when he's been in potential points positions, but I still don't think he would have got any points anyway. So it's just down to whether they can see it through and get these results when they happen. Latifi finally, showing some pace in qualifying. I think he will out-qualify Russell at some point this year, whereas last year he just didn't look like he was even close to it. And then he's just got to, not panic. We've not seen him wheel to wheel at all in Formula One because he's never been wheel to wheel. He's always been at the back or fighting with the Hasses. So when he's up there with an Alonso and an Ocon in an Alpine or a Raikkonen and a Giovinazzi, how is he going to fare? And if he can race them well and not punt them off, and then maybe you might see Latifi stealing a point in that odd race here and there. Again, I don't think it will be this race. I think it's a little too soon in the season for that. But you never know. These things do happen, and sometimes it's those early results when people are still getting used to the cars that carry you through for the whole season. So it's a possibility for them, definitely. But as I said, I think it's unlikely to be this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely to be this weekend as well. It is meant to be dry this weekend for Portimao, around 20 degrees. So kind of typical weather for that part of the world. But yeah, it's gonna be hard for Williams. But at least they're not the slowest team on the grid. Excuse me, it's very dry throat today. At least they're not the slowest car on the grid anymore, Phil. That title very much belongs to Putin Haas, as you again have called them a few times so far.
Yep.
I mean, other than Mick Schumacher potentially pulling out something unbelievable, even then, it's just impossible to see them really getting anywhere close to the points. They're comfortably the worst car in the grid. I mean, do you see anything for them at Portugal at all?
No, they'd be better off if they gave Mick his dad's 1991 Jordan that he made his Formula One debut with a proper gearbox in the Ford DFV V8, and then let Egghead do whatever he wants to do. I think the Jordan 7-Up Jordan would be faster than the Putin Haas. And it makes sense since the Haas NASCAR team also sucks too. So it kind of is like Gene is deciding he just wants to be terrible at all aspects of his motorsport deal. So it doesn't affect me as much on the Formula One side, except for the fact that Mick Schumacher is just going to be spending the first year plus of his career driving a horrible race car, and probably the terrible morale and team situation that they have there. It more affects me because my favorite driver on this side of the pond drives for Stewart-Haas Racing, and they're terrible. So, but I don't know what the game plan is. I don't know what they need help with PR. I mean, I get Gunther Steiner's popular on the Netflix deal, and that's fine. But Gunther Steiner is not great, and that car isn't either. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, it's like they're getting into the realm of some of these other YouTubers where they go and talk about the worst teams out there, and like what are they going to leave loose, or are they going to bring a proper functioning car? I mean, they'll bring a proper functioning car and it'll look the part. We should make a spin counter for what's his face, for Egghead, to see how many he'll have this weekend. Probably my over-under's 3 across all sessions. I figure he'll spin out at least once every practice. Okay, no, I have to make it more then. So then that means I figure he's going to spin out. So I have to make it 5, because he's going to spin out at least once every practice, figure qualifying and in the race. He'll get spooked because somebody's around him, and he'll probably spin off the final corner or something. The good thing is there's sand traps there, so then he might get stuck. That would be the one good thing for the race, compared to him just being out there doing what he usually does. Yeah, they're awful. I would like to see Mick drive one of his dad's old cars instead. It would probably be cooler. It would throw everything off because he'd be in like a V8 or a V10 or something. It'd be nice, because we know that he can drive a race car. He's a defending Formula 2 world champion, but he's not going to be able to show that this year.
No, absolutely. I mean, that car is miles off the end of the day, and there's no other way. I mean, it's just an awful car to drive. I mean, we obviously saw Schumacher. He spun, I think, at the pit exit and lost his front wing. He had to drive. It was heartbreaking watching driving around without a front wing on. You couldn't go into the pits because of the incident he caused. Well, that's the way it goes. And obviously, Voldemort, he's going to have a few spins at some point. I mean, I need to give a mention. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous, but because it's so ludicrous, I have to say it. The latest rumor going around is that apparently Voldemort's dad is going to buy the entire team for next year, and he's going to bring on William Story, aka Mr. Rich Energy, as an investor / sponsor. So yeah, the Ural Kali Haas Rich Energy Formula One team could be a thing in the near future, but I don't think.
Well, it sounds like Gene is bailing, so that would probably be the best business decision Gene's made in a while.
Yeah, he's going to make a massive loss at the end of the day. His team back of the grid like it is. It's all looking so good for them, but
I don't think it's a rumor. I think it's a done deal. I genuinely do. I don't think it's a crazy.
You really think it is?
Yeah.
Oh God, is that the end of the door now?
Yeah. it's just
you mentioned my name on the podcast.
It's William Story giving me my free case of Rich Energy for mentioning them.
Other energy drinks are available. Yeah, so actually, are they available? I mean, you can even buy them. I've never actually seen one. I've seen people
order them online.
Yeah, you got to order it online, but let's be honest, it's just a money laundering deal or something. It's got to be, because they have no income. There's no way they have a legitimate income. You never see them anywhere. So
yeah, William Story is the Andrea Sassetti of today's Formula One world, really.
He is, yeah. I would not be surprised if he has connections to the criminal underworld. I really would. Especially,
which makes sense that he'd be in business with Egghead's dad too.
Exactly.
And Vladdy, who's his daddy.
Vladdy, who was his daddy. Oh, right. So, lads, podium predictions. Oh God, I think Hamilton was so good at Fort Mile last year, but so was Verstappen at the same time. He absolutely dragged that car up. Oh, it's a real tough one to call. I'm gonna say Max Verstappen, but I will say as well that Hamilton will claim his 100th pole in Formula One, which he can do this weekend, which is just a bonkers statistic. How has that happened? That's unbelievable. So yeah, I'm going to say Max Verstappen to win, Hamilton second. I'm going to go with a safe option of Sergio Perez. I think he'll have a clean weekend. He did amazing there to recover like he did last year, and he's got a much better car this year. If he keeps his nose clean, I think he'll get third comfortably. I think he'll be miles ahead of Norris and Bottas, who'll be fourth and fifth. Tom, what's your podium prediction?
Podium, I think I'm just going to go with a fairly safe podium like yourself. I'm going for Hamverper for the podium there. But complete opposite to you, I think Bottas is going to shock everyone and get pole.
Oh, okay. He is good in qualifying, to be fair.
But he's not going to. He's going to do naff all in a race and not even be on the podium, though.
Yeah, I can see both of them things happening. Phil, what's your top 3 prediction?
I mean, I obviously have my personal bias towards LH44, but I think Max Verstappen will make it 2 consecutive wins. I will agree with you on the pole, though. I figure Lewis will get pole, but Max will have outright race pace, which will end up giving him the advantage there. I will say Verstappen, Hamilton, and Lando Norris will be on the podium in third.
I can see that. He's on fire. And that car is a very good car. So it's definitely possible. You never know, Perez and Bottas could have some sort of incident. They could crash into each other. Who knows? That's why the season's so exciting. Henrico, what's your podium prediction?
I think it's going to go pole probably to Hamilton. I actually think Hamilton's going to win this one, but it's going to be close. Verstappen second, and I'm actually going to go with Leclerc third.
He has been doing very well.
He's been outperforming that car.
He has, absolutely.
And then Bottas is probably going to be a very distant fifth with Perez in fourth.
Okay, you never know. Ferrari could pull an incredible strategy, but given what they've done in the recent past, probably not. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, they've not done bad this year, strategy at least. Let's be honest here. So yeah, bold prediction time. I think everybody knows what's coming now. I have to say it because it's still not happened. Despite him being in the points position, a part of the last race, it's going to be George Russell getting his first point for Williams. That is my bold prediction. Whether it'll happen or not, I don't know, but I need to keep saying it because the one time I don't say it, he'll get his first points for Williams. I need to keep it going. Tom, what's your bold prediction?
Well, I say my not so bold predictions will be track limits will again be an issue, and people will be moaning about it constantly. When people are just stick to the rules, and then you won't have to moan about it. So I think track limits will be an issue. I think it's not going to be as box office as the last few races have been, but it's going to be great to watch, seeing these people push these cars in a track like they've got at Portimao and the Algarve. I think it's going to be a great spectacle to watch, but it's going to be more for the diehard fans rather than the Netflix masses. And there'll be lots of people complaining, why isn't this as exciting? Why are there no explosions? But my bold prediction doesn't actually match what my prediction for the podium is going to be, because it completely throws it out. But I'm going to put
edging his bets. He's edging his bets. He's got to get.
I am definitely. I think you could potentially see a double podium for either McLaren or Ferrari, and I'm not sure which.
Ooh.
Potentially Ferrari.
When was the last time we had a double McLaren podium?
Do you know what? I know exactly when it was.
Wasn't it Kevin Magnussen?
Yeah,
and
2014.
Australia
2014.
Australia.
Yeah, Australia 2014. That was the last McLaren double podium.
Well, bloody remember.
The only podium for Kevin Magnussen, IMSA driver for Ganassi these days. Yeah.
But they didn't actually stand on the podium in that race because it was Ricciardo getting disqualified after the race that led to a double podium.
Yeah.
Did you look that up before now, Tom? Was that always going to be your bold prediction? You were just like, you know what? I've got all the stats here.
Mate, how often do I talk about McLaren?
Very true. You've
you ask me something about McLaren in my lifetime, I'm probably going to know it.
Very often. Yeah, that's very bold. That's very bold. And double podium for Ferrari as well. I mean, Sainz has been doing a good job for me. Yeah, he's off Leclerc, but I think almost anybody be off Leclerc, especially for the first one joining the new team. So yeah, let's see what happens with that. I'd love a double McLaren podium. I don't think it's going to happen, but who knows? Phil, what's your bold prediction?
I mean, I can't go that as far as Tom, or I mean, I know that your move, George, is for George. I think for a lot of people, including me, who support George and figure his future will be in the proper car, it would be nice to actually see him get him points. I think veteran presence, a man of few words, a man that was supported by one of the guys that has been on this podcast before. His guy, Kimi Räikkönen, sneaks points out this weekend in the Alpha Slobber, and actually helps them in their chase to go and put Henrico over, and his thoughts that Alpine are gonna get beat by Sauber Alpha in their last year before who knows what's going to end up happening. They're probably going to be a Renault junior team probably next year. So that'll be something. I think Kimi Räikkönen gets points.
Could happen. It could easily happen. But all them bottom three teams don't have any points. Any points they score are huge for any of their chances of finishing 8th, which is, again, difference between tens or hundreds of millions of pounds in prize money. It's a lot of money. Henrico, what's your bold prediction?
Double points finish for Aston Martin.
Could happen. Stroll scored points in both of the first 2 races, so it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I just want to see my boy in the points. It pains me to see Vettel struggling so much. I rate him very highly as not so much as a driver. Look, he's still got the talent, he's still got the knowledge. I think he's just a bit very conservative. And I think that car's not what they promised him. But I think we saw towards, just after the slick tires in Imola started coming into their own, he was doing very well on base for a while. And then the red flag and everything. So yeah, he's definitely getting more used to that car. So I think he's going to start doing a lot better from this weekend on.
It's definitely possible. I mean, he obviously was hampered with gearbox issues in the last race, and that's why he had to start from the pits. I don't think he did a bad job at all, to be honest with you. I think people slagging him off after that race just don't have a clue, really. I mean, if you've got a problem with your car, you can't drive it properly. It's always going to be there in your head. So, yeah, it'd be good to see Vettel back in the points. The guy needs a lift. He's had a very rough 2 first races, one of his own making and one not. So, I think he's due some luck. But before I plug our social medias, I will let you guys do the same. So, Tom, where can people go if they want to hear more from you?
Well, the live stream can see just above my head at Monkey Seat Pod and www.monkeyseatpod.com. You can catch us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook on there, and say the website as well. And we're on all major podcasting platforms, and we cover all motorsport, not just Formula One.
Great to hear, Phil. If people want to hear some more unfiltered content, where should they go?
You can go and find me on the Strip Podcast, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find the Strip Podcast. We're at Strip Pod on Twitter. I am at Philip G. Mathew on Twitter. And I work for Sportlight Pro, so I work for George. You'll be seeing the preview of the Portuguese Grand Prix coming out this week. You can go and read that, get a little primer before you get to practice to see or get an idea what you're going to experience. And probably be a lot of what we talked about here, minus all the colorful stuff. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Oh, fair enough, mate. Thank you again for doing that. You're on the preview podcast and you're writing the preview article website as well. Busy man. Gotta love it though. So, Henrico, where can people go if they want to see more from you? You're muted, Henrico.
Second time in 2 videos that's happened. Hey. I'm part of the Shakedown group on Facebook, specifically Formula Shakedown, probably the most wholesome Formula One community on Facebook, very actively moderated. So yeah, there's none of that, back and forth absolute bile that's on most of the Formula One threads. Then we've got Motor Shakedown and Shakedown Australia. So all things racing you'll find on the Shakedown pages.
Good to hear, mate. Yeah, definitely head over to all these guys' shows and pages and everything. Very good content from all these guys. So yes, thank you for joining us on this episode. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. And you get a shout out at the start of the show. We've read off quite a few, so it's great to see all the support for the show and all the love from you guys. It's really good to see. So we are also available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Cast. Just search for Formula One Grid Talk and all of those. Of course, we do live stream as well on YouTube now. So the show will be up immediately after its live streams. For all the good and the bad and the ugly is all left in for you guys. So there you go. You get to see the Grid Talk podcast as it gets recorded. Go and check out our back catalogue of shows as well. Over 90 episodes now for you to get through. Not just previews and qualifying and race reviews, also like documentary style features like we did about Ayrton Senna, about the best drivers of each year, Tiregate, 1994 Benetton, things like that as well. And yeah, we'll be back on Saturday to review the Portuguese Grand Prix qualifying, and that'll be our 100th episode as well. So thank you very much for everybody who's listened throughout the entire run. It's going fantastically. Let's see where the next 100 takes us. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Goodbye. Okay, stop recording. There we go. Still going out live on YouTube, but yeah, you guys can unmute or whatever now. It's fine.
All right.
Deserve that drink after that, George.
Yeah, it's always a mouthful.
Yeah.
Every time we just add a new platform, just got another one to get through.
I've just put them all up on the website and said, I'll just go to the website. You can see they're all linked on there.
Yeah.
No, I can't remember all the places where we are anyways. And it's liable that I even remember what I'm doing during my show. So then you're going to tell me how many places our show is distributed on. I'm like, come on, just if you really want to just follow me, you'll get the show. Like that's how it should be.
Sometimes you got
truth in advertising.
But I know what you mean.
Well, yeah, that's the problem we have in society now. We're too highbrow for segments of the Formula One fandom, honestly. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
We speak the truth, and we don't sit there and tell you all the Sky F1 crap.
When Sky first took F1, I was really worried about it, and I remember distinctly there was It was David Garrido was the year before they started taking over. David Garrido was the reporter, and he knew nothing about it. And I remember they were doing a preview show for Spa, but again, this is before they were actually covering it. And then they were talking about Eau Rouge, and David Garrido goes, "Oh, I heard of that." And I was just like, oh my god! It's like, is this going to be the analysis that we're going to have? And I remember sort of tweeting about it quite a lot.
He heard of Eau Rouge is probably because he wears Eau Rouge when he's doing his other activities. That's probably what it is.
But then, when they actually took on the coverage, and they obviously plowed a lot of money into it, and getting people like Brundle involved and stuff like that. I quite liked the initial team they had as well, and I quite liked it, and I kind of turned around on it. But then the last few years, it's just got ridiculous. I think they lost me when they had that bucket of milk in the McLaren. That's when I kind of I was just done with them. Did you not see that?
No, I've not watched Sky for a long time.
They had Carlos Sainz driving Lando Norris around the track, and Lando Norris had to hold a bucket of milk, and then they reversed it, and whoever had the most milk left in it at the end was the winner. And it's just
they both ended. Yeah, I saw that clip because that was a Johnny Herbert bit during testing. Yeah, I saw that, and you knew at the end of the day they were just both going to wear, because I forget which one had it. I think Carlos had milk left and he just dumped it on Lando's head. So then it's okay, so what's the difference?
And it was a rental car as well, wasn't it? So it's that's going to go back. Someone's going to get in it after a hot day and be like, oh. Yeah. So no, I'm done with them since then, to be honest. So I don't really watch the build up anymore at all. I used to watch every minute of it, but I don't anymore.
I haven't watched it for years, the build up. I do watch the actual race broadcast, but I haven't watched the build up.
Yeah. Crofty gets to me with all his screaming and all, but really
he does a good job.
He does a good job, and it's good, and it's and there's no ads, of course, which is great.
Yeah.
Unlike all of American motorsports where you have ads every 5 laps, at least with freaking Formula One, you get the whole race. I actually sat there last race at Imola, even though I know Imola for decades is a bore fest. And I sat and I watched the pre-race. I watched the whole thing. I'm like, oh wow, it's raining. I was like, that's the one good thing that came out of that. I'm like, oh, it's raining. It's gonna be interesting. And then of course Lewis bins a start, and then that was the end of that whole deal. So I'm like, okay, I should have turned it off then. But then I was like, I kind of need to know. That's how I used to do it. And it's like, now I have a podcast, so I kind of have to watch this. So then I sat through that nonsense because I hate Imola. I never liked Imola. It's not just because of what happened with Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. It's not because of all the huge crashes that happened back in the day. It's just not a good circuit. It's the only reason that they call it a grade 1 circuits because they have like an 18-mile pit road or some crap. I mean, like, what the hell? What makes it a grade 1? Like, it either has to be some crappy Tilke drome, which has the same gimmicky chicane type turns, and you have a hard braking turn 1. Like, you can name a Tilke drome outside of Coda. You know, every track has the same characteristics, and then some stupid facade. They have some stupid infield building that he designed. That's the whole thing, that Tilke's there to make some crazy building that's themed to the country that the racetrack's in. That's it. And then you just have this like meh racetrack.
I like Imola as a challenge, but I wouldn't want it on the calendar every year. I'd be happy for it to alternate every other year with Monza, or if they have like this wild card thing that I've been championing a wild card thing for years. You know, way back to when they were doing Hockenheim and Nürburgring every other year. And I would say, well, you know, they should do that with more circuits. You know, have at least 1, maybe 2 races a year where you just go to different circuits every year. Because then you won't get this situation we end up with where a country signs a 10-year contract, like South Korea or something, and after 2 years they realise that it's just not viable, and then it just drops off the calendar. This way, you get countries they can try it, and like a 1-year tester, and then if there's no take up on it, then you don't have to do it. It's like with Saudi Arabia, they've got this massive long deal, but at least they're doing it the right way. They're doing a street circuit first, and then year 2, year 3, permanent racetrack. It's a purpose-built facility once they've actually kind of tested the water with it. So, but I think, that's definitely the way they should go. You know, just like a couple of, because then we'll get to see these Imolas and Portimaos and stuff like that thrown in.
Yeah.
They can't afford to do it every year. And then we might actually get to go back to Nürburgring a bit more.
Yeah, it's like I loved Estoril, but now it's super narrow. But then when you consider they're running Imola, they're saying, I think it's a grade 2 now, Estoril circuit. But the fact of the matter is, Estoril was basically the same kind of deal. I just love that circuit. I don't know what it is. I just love the challenge and the undulations and some of the turns. And it's very narrow, very tough to pass. It's basically the same as Imola. It's basically 2 passing zones. But it was a circuit that I remember in my early fandom too, I think. And then also Senna's first win was there. But that's the kind of track you could go to. But, it has to be a grade 1 circuit, which is why America, they only had Coda, Indy, and then they had to make a new one. Like, there's plenty of great racetracks in the country. Like for Henrico, like in Australia, there's plenty of great racetracks. But, they don't have the safety. I'm like, come on. Everybody and their mother would want to watch one of these cars go up the mountain and it's not safe. Like, come on. It's not about safety. If you're going up the mountain, at the end of the day, they can run a safe race. It'll be really difficult to pass, but it'll be really, really cool. You're only going to have the passing zone at the chase and a hell corner. And,
I would like to see a return to like the non-championship races, just like an exhibition race once a year, maybe even like whether it be at the end of the season or a pre-season thing. They just do a non-championship race at a venue that wouldn't normally go to. Even if
with like test
that would
drivers
be,
or something.
that would be exactly. Even if you did it with test drivers, that'd be great. It'd be like an open test session for young drivers and a non-championship event. And then you could go to these tracks and just see, even if they are like grade 2, as long as you can make them safe, then I would love to see something like that.
That's
as long as they don't have to go to Ricard anymore.
What's wrong with Paul Ricard? I quite like Paul Ricard. No,
Oh God.
Oh,
it's not terrible as a track. It's terrible from a spectating point of view. It really is.
The
Yeah.
aesthetic of it is bad enough. You have to be stoned to want to watch that track. And then if you're stoned, you're probably going to have a fit because of all the color changes. You don't know where they're going half the time because the whole track looks exactly the same.
I can't get used to it. On the driving games, I just can't get used to it. I never know where I am.
it's awful,
Yeah, because you
isn't
got
it?
86 different versions of the circuit. I'm like, okay, can you go and put the sprinklers on too? Like Bernie wanted, like the troll wanted it to do. Like, let's just start putting sprinklers on racetracks. Let's just go. They have sprinklers there, so let's put sprinklers. You know, like if it's kind of boring, let's go and do that.
I will be
That's how
dumb
NASCAR
if they do that.
I'd
as long
love
as
to
they
see them. I'd love to see them come back to South Africa. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Kyalami is a great circuit, but
Great, sir.
Yeah.
I've actually done some inquiries as to that because the guy who owns Kyalami now, I forgot his name, but he basically owns Porsche in South Africa. He's one of the biggest.
Wow.
His Porsche Center in Johannesburg. I speak under correction, but I think it's the biggest Porsche Center in the world. And they basically bought Kyalami and they just host events there. They've got all sorts of endurance races and they revamped it massively. And it's a FIA Grade 2 circuit. And I inquired, why it's not a Grade 1. Apparently it has to do with runoff areas. They're not big enough. And the big thing is the capacity for spectators is not quite as big as it needs to be, and something to do with the medical center as well, as far as I'm aware. So I would love to see it on the calendar because then I can actually go and watch an F1 race. But the other thing is our government's never going to put in that kind of money to have a race. Yeah, they spent $10 billion on the 2010 World Cup, but they're not going to spend 100 on an F1 race because it's not going to bring in as much. Never mind that we lost 15 billion on the World Cup.
Oh no, yeah.
What's happened to the stadiums? Have they all just been left pretty much? Are they still being used?
There are some of them that are being used. The big one they built in Johannesburg, it was called Soccer City. It's now the FNB Stadium, First National Bank. It's used mainly for music concerts and shows and things like that. The other stadiums, a lot of them were upgrades, so they're still used for rugby and stuff. But there are a couple that are just, like the one in Nelspruit, as far as I'm aware, is just kind of sitting there. And that was purpose built at, I don't know how many billion rand. And
Jesus.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Johannesburg Welcome, which used to have MotoGP, and then that
that's
just
where I live,
disappeared.
actually.
Yeah.
I live
They
in
have an
Elkhorn.
oval. Yeah. And they have a big oval too.
Yeah, we've got the giant oval. And Pakisa is a great track for MotoGP. Valentino Rossi actually said that it was one of his favorite tracks to race on. And I went to go and watch the MotoGP there as a kid, and it was fantastic. The amount of tourism that came to Velcom with that race was incredible. We had people here, in their thousands, and the industry here really took off. But when I was just out of school, I worked for an accounting firm, and we went to go and audit the track. And this was about 8 years after the last MotoGP race. And it's so sad. The private box, basically, that they built on the side of the track is just derelict. There's nothing there. The control tower it's everything's covered in dust. They've got sheds full of Rotax go-karts that they were going to start a racing school with. It's all just sitting there. They built a driver's restaurant. It's just sitting there, and everything's just going to ruin.
Very sad.
That's what is it? Rossi won his first race when he made his debut for Yamaha, and Yamaha hadn't won a race in years or something. Everyone freaked out. It was like they freaked out. Oh man, Valentino Rossi's leaving Honda. He's going to Yamaha. They haven't won in forever, and then he won the first race there. Yeah, I remember. That's Rossi though. That was a very challenging circuit. That's probably grade 2, whatever, grade 3. But that's the two things you pointed out, Henrico. They say the runoff area and the I think the medical facilities is a key. That I get. That's key, major, because of something that happened yesterday at one of the races here. And also the what was a fan, acts the attendance. I'm like, shut up. The fan attendance crap is nonsense. At the end of the day, they ran, I remember when they ran Phoenix here, and it was a freaking ostrich track, and they just put up temporary grandstands. And the ostrich
they do that at Monaco. I mean,
yeah. Monaco's the exception to everything, though. They break every rule the FIA put out. It's just like, no, it's Monaco. We'll let them.
Well, Monaco holds the Monaco Masters. I'm like, where do you hold a tennis tournament? How many people are in? Isn't a tennis tournament supposed to be 32 people, whatever? Where you have the courts? Oh, they just go over the river. Yeah, they go over the river, drive under the whatever tunnel, and they go and hold the tournament. I'm like, how the heck do you have that? They run them. They had the classic thing, and Charles Leclerc was there driving a 70s Ferrari a few days ago. You know, like, I like how it's like, oh, it's a city thing, and you have to do all that stuff. Like, oh, you talk about safety, you talk about, I'm like, shut up. It's not that. It's just how much money are you going to give us so that we can run a Grand Prix? That's why we spend all these races in the Middle East going to nowhere's will. Other than, I mean, Bahrain has at least become a good race, thankfully. The other ones are just nonsensical.
I think Dubai is a really nice race to be at. I think the whole atmosphere in that is fantastic, but geez, it's a boring race. Holy crap.
Dubai, I've never seen a good race at that particular circuit. Like, at least at Qatar, that is a good circuit, and the MotoGP, and they have that super long front straightaway where they're always able to slipstream. It's got a nice mix, not a whole lot of elevation, of course, but it's got a nice mix of corners. You have a little bit of passing ability there. Like, that's a good track. I'd like to see Formula One race there. That would be a good idea. They're grade one. If MotoGP races there, then you could race there. So that's the whole thing. If MotoGP race at Laguna Seca, in theory, Formula One should be able to race there, but they won't.
They'd never do the corkscrew, would they? They'd never.
No, they could do the corkscrew, but the point is, the runoff is just, the excuse they'll use is the runoff. But if MotoGP raced there back in the 90s on 2 strokes, and then they raced there here a decade ago with the 990s and 880s, they're going to be able, they could run a Formula One car there. I mean, they brought back Indy cars again. They have sports cars there. They can run Formula One there. If MotoGPs run there, they can run there.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about how much are they willing to pay Liberty to host a race there. That's the big thing. And it's I think Liberty gives a lot of kind of lenience to the signature races like your Spa and your Silverstone and Imola to a certain extent, because I'm of the opinion that even if they weren't going to pay their Grand Prix fees, they'll still want to have the races there because there's so much hype about those circuits. But for a new circuit to come onto the calendar, it's ridiculous how much money they have to invest. So I can understand why it's limited to the Middle East, because that's where the money is.
And Florida.
Well, when you're the owner, when you're the Hard Rock, when you're the Miami Dolphins owner and you run Hard Rock casinos and all that,
you can afford it.
You can afford it. I mean, that's really what that whole thing is. I'm surprised, honestly, that actually
you were convinced
came off.
It was never going to happen, weren't you? You were convinced, like all the old ladies had just never let it happen.
Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, you consider politics in this country are so pathetic as it is, and then it's Florida. And then you talk about Miami Gardens area. It's one side of it is old, crotchety people, whatever, crying wolf about noise, which is how all these racetracks get closed around here. And then on the other side, you have basically, it's like 180-degree turn where you have African Americans, Hispanics who aren't able to live, like make ends meet. And that's where basically University of Miami got all their football players for a decade plus, and they made the powerhouse. So you have this dichotomy, you have this basically thing in the middle. And now all of a sudden, Miami's always had this thing with racing. It's been going on since the 80s, since before I was even alive, where whether it was Ralph Sanchez or whoever, like they made race tracks in the city streets. they had IMSA, they had IndyCar, they had all that. This is next level. I don't know how it came off. It's mainly because they're running it around the Hard Rock Stadium. If they were running it in proper Miami, like if they were running it in, there's no chance it would happen. It's the same way as the track that was supposed to run here in New Jersey. And that was going to be up, you know, it would have been like a train ride for me, a 40-minute train ride. And that would have been a thing. You could get people from New York, get people from Philly. If they really want to make the big hike, you get a whole bunch of people. But the logistics of it, the location of it, and everything that was involved to go through that, there was no way it was going to happen. It's because it's next to a stadium. That's literally, and it's because it's Hard Rock, and whatever, Stephen Ross is a billionaire and the Hard Rock guy is a billionaire. And then also Liberty is kind of having in, they want to have 2 US Grand Prix. So that's how, and they're trying to hedge because they don't know what's going on with COTA, because they're trying to run COTA off the schedule, and COTA's hedged themselves basically and jumped on with NASCAR. So they're kind of preparing one way or the other. They know that they have 2 opportunities. Either they'll go NASCAR and might look at other series, or they still have Formula One. And then Miami's going to have their race. And then I think they'll just call Roger Penske and say, hey, so what do you want? What do you need from us so that you can make Indianapolis ready to go and hold the Grand Prix again? And then that's probably what will end up happening. They'll run Indianapolis again, and they'll run the current, I guess, road course, which means they won't run oval turn 1, where all the problems happened years ago.
Yeah, I've said a few times that Roger Penske wants it and Formula One want it, so at some point it's going to happen. They'll end up back there. I'm hoping that they, if Miami is definitely going to be every year, that they might do a share thing. So like every other year, it's like swaps between Indianapolis and COTA. I think that's probably the best thing, the best outcome for the sport there, because I think there's definitely some value in having Indy back on the calendar, but I don't want to lose COTA altogether. I could live with it.
I don't want to lose COTA either. I love the circuit, and it's a good, proper circuit for Formula One, especially the first section. First section of the track defies logic that any of these guys can keep the car on the track. I don't know how they do it, and they're able to repeat it. And it's a true challenge. Unlike most Tilke drones, this isn't a Tilke drone. It was Tavo Hellman helped design it, and that's the whole thing. People just act like he doesn't exist. If it wasn't for Tavo Hellman, we wouldn't have COTA. We wouldn't have Mexico City back on the schedule either. So that circuit, I love COTA. I mean, it's definitely one that is a polarizing track, but it's such a challenge, and it's super rough now. So it's definitely the oddball Formula One circuit in that these guys actually have to race a rough circuit. Everything is billiard table smooth. So you add a lot of different pieces to it, I bet MotoGP doesn't want to lose it, especially Marc Marquez, because he owns that place. But, that is the best circuit that they've made in America for top line racing in a very long time. And if they were to go away from the world stage, it would be a real sad thing, losing Formula One, losing MotoGP, World Endurance Championship, because that's the circuit that's meant for that kind of racing, really, not just NASCAR, which in its own right, I'm curious how that's going to be next month. But
right, lads. Well, it's been great talking. I need to get going, unfortunately, but yeah, I'll let you know when the shows are going to be over Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's got 3 of them in 3 days over next weekend, so it's going to be a busy one. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sundays. Take care.
All right,
cool. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, man.